A series of atmospheric rivers will keep us with active weather through the last weekend of 2024 and our holiday week. I'm ABC 10 Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods looking at the timing of all this active weather as well as we move through a series of wet weather events. Now, our weather impact alert headline includes the timing of the biggest weather system that we're going to have to kick off this holiday week on Christmas Eve with morning rain and thunderstorms as well as Sierra snow. So needing to expect that wet weather and consider travel plans certainly will keep you ahead of all the dangerous travel as well as those big snarls on the roadways as well. Now you can see the plumes of moisture heading in from the Pacific, and this is what keeps us with an active weather environment and why we're going to keep these in-depth forecasts going on our ABC 10 Plus streaming app. Make sure you download it wherever you stream on TV. It's live, local, always on, and the most important factor, it's free. All right, let's get to it. Here's a look at the satellite and radar. Through much of our Monday, we've seen those showers riding north of I-80. But as we expand this picture, you can see we've got a big weather system pulling on the coast and some reinforcements coming in behind. That's what's really going to drive up the intensity of the storm system coming in. So our winter weather advisory goes into place at 7 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve, and it continues through 7 p.m. It's actually a fast-moving system. Rain totals aren't going to be too impressive, and snow totals are going to be pretty much winter-like. It's the fact that it hits on Christmas Eve when so much travel is happening not only locally but throughout the state. The other thing to consider, our high surf warning continues until Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. all up and down the Pacific. Perhaps you've seen the images of the Santa Cruz Wharf, part of it crumbling in the rough seas. In fact, a couple people had to be rescued. Unfortunately, very dangerous conditions there and all the way south into La Jolla. Some big waves, and people are trying to get a good view of that. Make sure you keep a safe distance. You never know when one of those sneaker waves is going to come up and just go over the coastline there. Could see some road closures, by the way, especially near the coast as well with some of the higher waves coming in. Taking a look at our futurecast, you can see the biggest band of rain moving through in terms of total precipitation right around 5 a.m. up and down the Central Valley. Now, this is also going to have embedded thunderstorms with it. Behind it, we've got the colder air. So initially, we're going to have a brief line of rain in the Sierra at about 8,000 feet. And then as that cold air works in, it quickly turns over to snow. So kind of some dicey travel, changing conditions in the Sierra. Still dealing with areas of rain for the valley at 8 a.m. Will dry out briefly at about noon. Continued snow, though, for the Sierra, and then a couple of random showers coming through during the early afternoon. But all in all, this is wrapped up by 10 p.m., meaning Santa's sleigh and his reindeer should have a pretty nice drive and fly into Northern California for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. A look at how far that severe weather outlook expands throughout the state. It goes all the way through the Sacramento Valley and most of the San Joaquin Valley, parts of the foothills, and along the coast. So as that cold front starts to move through, we'll see the instability build and a chance of thunderstorms very early in the morning. Plus, we're going to have the gusty winds. That'll really be amplified at about 5 a.m., right when that line comes through. So it's going to be the heaviest rain, chance of thunderstorms, and the gusty winds. Those gusty winds continue in the Sierra a little bit longer into the early morning, and then right around the mid-morning hour, we'll start to see those taper off. But all in all, quick-moving system, a real brief period of heavy rain, gusty winds, and the thunderstorms. I mentioned those snow levels. Let's just take a look for a moment on those changing conditions. It'll briefly be at 8,000 feet tomorrow morning, putting it above the pass level, and then it comes down to about 5,000 feet during the mid-morning and early afternoon. Changing conditions, and with people chaining up so low in elevations, it's going to be slow going over the mountain passes. We've got another weather system due in later in the week. Once again, we have changing conditions. 6,000-foot snow level on Thursday. That goes up to about 8,000 feet on Friday. And unfortunately, we don't want to necessarily see super high snow levels at this point in the season. I'll look at the model rainfall totals. I mentioned this a moment ago as well. This isn't a huge whopper of a storm that's going to give us incredible rainfall totals. Decent, though. Half an inch to over an inch of rain from our Christmas Eve storm, and then for total snow, about 1 to 12 to 14 inches, say, at the higher elevations. But that's just the first system that we're going to be tracking. Take a look at the timeline here. Christmas Eve is our big one. We're going to have heavy rain, thunderstorms, and that snow level dropping to 5,000 feet. Christmas Day, it's dry. Showers come in later, and then that keeps us with a fairly active pattern Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with moderate rain and snow. Folks up in the high country, they're already getting ready. They're kind of trying to time things out, how to navigate beating some of the biggest impacts of snow. We were up there today. Just talking to travelers who were trying to make their way to family and friends for the holiday and make sure they did so with the best weather possible, which is going to be tough because we've only got these small windows of opportunity here. First line of storms comes through overnight Monday into Christmas Eve, a break on Christmas Day, and then we get right back at it as we head into the latter part of the week, into the last weekend of 2024. As far as the atmospheric landfall forecast, we're looking at about an AR2 up and down the coast here, which will be moderate, largely beneficial, some hazardous conditions. About an inch or so in the capital region expected over the time frame here, about 2 to 5+ inches of rain along the northwest coast. That's at least the early projections in terms of total rainfall. When we talk about the snow forecast, though, Tuesday through Sunday, anywhere from about 25 to almost 50 inches of snow possible. That's going to be on the higher end of things. Likely we'll have a little bit lower, but again, it's going to be fluctuating between rain and snow. So even though that's the total snow forecast, we might not see it all sticking on the ground periodically. It's going to melt because of some of the rain coming in. As far as our snow water equivalent, let's just take a peek at this. We've had some decent storms come through. So in terms of where we are average to date, 80 to over 150% of average. When we look at that April 1st number, where would we be when we start to see generally the snowfall taper off and the snow melt starting to take over? We're at about 20 to 50% of where we should be at that point in the season. Not bad to start us off here. So statewide average, 113% of average. April 1st average, we're over 30% right now. Our major reservoir supply levels. This is really important because that snow melt has to go somewhere. So it runs downhill, fills our reservoirs, creeks, streams, rivers, what have you. And these are big containers here of that water. The snow, by the way, provides about a third of our water supply for the dry season. So we're looking at anywhere from about 30 to 70% of capacity. That's good news. This is the time of year that it's such a delicate situation because water managers have to figure out how much to keep in, how much to release based on the forecast of incoming precipitation. As far as our central Sierra reservoirs, we're looking at about 70 to 75% full and over 100% of average. So everything's looking really good right now. And that is why today the State Water Project is going to increase their allocation for the year to 15%. Earlier it was 5%, but the strong storms through early December allowed water managers to increase that to 15%. Partly due to the increase in reservoir levels. They are going to be monitoring soil moisture. And again, we are in that La Nina situation. So the dry long-range outlook is still reason to consider that could change in terms of allocation that will be delivered through the dry season. For some of you that are not familiar with our California water delivery system, it's a series of waterways that helps to pull water from the very wet part of the state in the north to the dry part of the state in the south. And it's really a wild network of conveyance. As you can see, there's many ways that this is pushed through the state. One of the biggest ways is through the California Aqueduct, but obviously many other ways through groundwater storage, as well as our rivers. And then there's imports as well. And we pull from the Colorado River Basin in through Southern California. So a lot goes into the thinking of how we store and manage our water in California. In terms of statewide precipitation, things are looking really good. And this is why water managers were able to increase that allocation. The wettest part of the state is above average. And so that's good news because that's where our biggest reservoirs are. As far as the southern part of the state, a little bit drier than where we would be this time of year. Would like to see those numbers come up, but we're a little bit lower at this point. Now, let's take a look at recent water years. Last year and even the year prior to that, we actually had pretty decent numbers, and that was coming off of 3 years of drought that helped to dig us out of the drought situation. A little bit low last year, but given that the prior year was so well above average, that put us in a really good position to start off this water year. And now we're right back to above average Water conditions, we're at we'll call it 6.5 inches for downtown Sacramento. Here's the key factor. We usually get about 19 inches of rain. So we have a lot of rain to still make up, but the wettest months are still ahead of us. That's January and February. So I know it's felt gloomy and wet and damp outside, but this is typical. This is what we get in December. And then we just like that, by the time we get to March into April, we just basically shut that faucet off and we're right back to the dry weather. So this is the time to get that moisture. It is going to be a likely warmer outlook for the 8 to 14 day climate outlook, taking us through the first week of January, and likely drier throughout the state. So it's starting to shape up a little bit more La Nina like across the west. Not totally, but a little bit more. And we're in the final countdown here. We've got that one day until Christmas Eve. That's our weather impact alert day. Christmas Day, as well as the first night of Hanukkah, 2 days away. And then 9 days away from ringing in the new year. Hard to believe we're already done with 2024. Our long-range outlook calls for those showers extending on Christmas Eve from the Pacific Northwest all along that I-5 corridor, shooting south into almost Southern California. But as far as the total accumulated precipitation, it really starts to trickle off and once you head through the Central Valley. Wednesday's largely dry for most of us throughout the West Coast. A few showers starting to pop up there across the Pacific Northwest by about the midday hours. And then we get that next weather system coming in. What you'll notice is it bypasses Southern California. So again, this is more La Nina-like, where it hits more of the Pacific Northwest and bypasses Southern California. So this is our Thursday storm. We'll continue to track those fluctuating snow levels as well as the total accumulated precipitation. Even our Friday storm system bypassing Southern California from about Santa Barbara all the way down into San Diego, whereas the Pacific Northwest still getting hit as well as Northern California. Saturday storm, pretty much the same cycle here, Northern California through the Pacific Northwest, and we'll take that all the way through our Sunday. I will say the good news on this is, since it is a big travel week, at least folks coming up and down the 5 will at least have some dry weather once you get out of the Central Valley over the Grapevine. We know how messy that can be when it gets bad weather. Monday, we kick off the next week, our last week partially of 2024, with a few showers. But for the most part, we are going to dry things out pretty significantly next week. Highs tomorrow near 40 in the Sierra. We're in the 40s and 50s for the foothills. Across the coast, we're in the 50s, but keep in mind we have that high surf warning just for those of you that plan to take some travel over to the Bay Area. Highs in the 50s up and down the valley, but there's not much difference from morning highs to morning lows to afternoon highs, simply because we've got that cold front coming through. So it's very likely we'll stay with a very steady temperature pattern throughout the day. Active weather continuing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with that nice break. How about the timing on that for Christmas Day for all the travelers? Things will be nice. The only caveat for the valley, we're going to be tracking some patchy morning dense fog. We'll keep a very close eye on that. There's that weather impact alert day on Tuesday. And then as we head into our Thursday, through our weekend forecast, still a lot of showers out there. But this is what I was talking about. A nice way to start off 2025 after a lot of rain and snow heading our way. We'll ring in the new year with dry weather.